Welcome back to part 2 of our ex1 for GRD131, where we're working with hierarchy, and we're going to pick up where we left off. You can use lines to separate, you can make lines to stand out. We don't really use underlines to make anything stand out anymore, but sometimes we could use lines like that to make that stand out. When I was messing around with this earlier, I even put a little division line, like I clicked on here, and I click, and then you hold shift to make it go straight, and then double click. And I'll go here and make this 2 pixels. And make sure you get off this tool. If you use the pen tool, get off of it, and then go back to your arrow. And now you could use this to create like a little division there. So I can, now this is part of a paragraph, so I'd have to backspace a little bit. I wanted this moved over. And now I have a little division here. Now, does that look good? Probably not. I can click on here and then move it over with my cursor. Now, does that look all right? Let me zoom back. Not really, so let me get rid of it. Do these lines look okay here? Let me see. I'm going to highlight that, and I'll hold shift and highlight that one. And I'm going to double click, and I'll make them 2 pixels. And that probably looks a little better. That way those lines don't overpower. And depending on how much space you put between the line, now it's really, you got to be careful here that you're not clicking on the text box. And I'm nudging, I'm just using my arrow key. The more you nudge that up and you create a little more space in there, it gives it a little more lightness to that element. You know, now it's a little lighter, and if I zoom out, you know, it has its own kind of look there. That doesn't look bad. And again, all I'm doing here is just kind of just pointing out a couple things. We have hierarchy 1, 2, 3, and our 3 most important things. We don't want anything fighting with each other. If these lines make things fight with each other, we don't want them. We can take them away. This is the most important thing. This is where your eye goes first, then your eye goes to here, and your eye goes to here. That's flow. Eye comes here, moves down, moves down. We're going to talk about flow because we read from top to bottom, left to right, so a lot of times we're going to have flow moving down a page like this. Sometimes we'll have flow that'll kind of move us in a circular pattern as well. But most of the time, if you see billboards, you're going from top left to bottom right. That's the way your eyes are going really quick and moving across and taking in the most important information, the second information, and then any details. So this is the most important thing, the headline. There's something here supporting it. And then if you keep reading, then you have this if you want to keep reading. So this doesn't have to be real big. This is, you know, if you already lured people in from this and then they move to here, then they're going to naturally go to here because they're interested. And that's the way ads work. You know, you lure them in with the headline. If they're interested, they'll read the next part. Oh, okay, there's a sale. And then they'll read the details. Oh, this is when they're open, and this is when I could pick things up and stuff like that. If they're interested. If not, it doesn't matter. But that's the way it works with hierarchy. Most important, second important, third important. Then we're using some other design principles like emphasis. We're making this bold. We're throwing a little graphic in here. And we're keeping things consistent. We're using Unity because they're all the same font. They're all in the same font family. They're all in this Crimson Pro. And we're also using proximity. They're all in their own space. This is in its headline space. This is in the middle space. This is in the bottom space. And they're kind of equally spaced apart. So all these things will come together. It's hard to explain one design principle at a time because a lot of them work together and a lot of them just kind of fall in place. Alignment. Well, how is this aligned? It's aligned center. And that helps us. And that helps our eye move down the page. And we're going to do that a lot on a vertical page. If we have vertical layouts, you know, portrait layouts, our eyes are going to naturally move down quite fast. And that's why you'll see a lot of centered content, as long as you don't have a lot of it. If you have a lot of copy, you don't want to read a lot of centered copy. But a little bit of centered copy is easy to read. So for a flyer like this, this works out well. Everything's centered. It has a nice shape. If you look at the shape that we have going on here, it's kind of a nice shape. It's like a head shape, almost like a skull. If you think about it, this is the forehead, the nose, and the chin. So it has kind of a nice shape. It has a nice flow to it. So we're using design principles here, believe it or not, and we're doing it in a very subtle way. We don't want to be overpowering and be looking up all kinds of decorative fonts and trying to really pull people in. You can pull people in with your information and by just making it stand out. We were also using white space. We're putting a lot of white space around here, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, if we didn't have anything bigger, that wouldn't look good, but with white space, it really makes this stand out. White space makes this stand out, and white space makes our eye go down here and see that this is in its own place. It's in its own kind of proximity. This is in its own proximity. If everything was next to each other, if this thing was up here, it would go with that. That would be part of like a subtitle, but it's not. It's a second thing. See, now it works like one unit. Another thing we can even do sometimes with headlines, if I click on this headline here and I adjust the line spacing. Now down here, this line spacing, and if I just double clicked in here, and it's at 100 right now, and if I just put it at like 90 and just brought it a little bit tighter, that makes these two lines work together. You'll see a lot of headlines with tighter leading. Detailed copy, like all the detailed copy, you don't want really tight because then it gets jumbled together and hard to read. But if you want these two lines, the bigger they are, you want them a little bit tighter. So I could even go down here and make it, double click in here and maybe make it 80. And that'll make it even tighter, as long as it doesn't look too jammed together. Now we do have this graphic here, but maybe I can make that a little smaller, move it up. And I also want to make sure that they're all centered. Now, the reason I took this out of being centered is because with this here, I still want this stuff all to be centered. So what I could do now is, since I made that smaller, is maybe move it over, because I want these two items to be centered. Even though most is not centered, they now work as one. Most and the exclamation point kind of work together, so I still want everything centered. I want these two things to be centered over important idea. So now everything's centered on the page. Everything looks pretty nice. It's nice, it's clean, it has a lot of white space, it's easy to read. This is design. It's not exciting, but this is what you want to do with design. You want to keep things nice and easy to read. You want to be following these principles and understanding them from a very basic standpoint. And that's what this is. You can't get more basic than a flyer that says most important idea, second important idea, and then third important idea. You can't get more basic than that. And we're already introducing a whole bunch of design principles already. And that's just a little introduction. We're going to read about them. We're going to watch videos about them. But we're going to start really simple and do some basic flyers in the beginning, so you really get that down and you really learn your process of where to start on the page. Now, part of this is just learning to work with Gravit a little bit, and we didn't do much except just work with text a little bit. But when you're done, if you do something like this, that's all you have to do is you're going to save it, because I did a bunch of work and I didn't save it yet. So I want to go over here to this save icon and save it and make sure that it turns gray. And also you want to make sure that this synchronizing is stopped. It's still synchronizing, and you don't want to share it until it's done synchronizing. So now it's done, and if this is your finished flyer that you worked on here and it has your last name, what you're going to do is you're going to share it. And in here, you want to make sure that you change viewer to developer. And you might say, well, what is that? Why am I a developer? It just means that when I get your file, I can look at everything. If it's just viewer, I can only just look at it. But if it's developer, I can save it. I can look at everything you've done on here. And that'll help later on in the semester. So make sure you choose developer. I think that's new for this semester, that they added that ability, because I think it always just was kind of in developer mode, but now they changed it. So make sure you choose developer. And then you copy this, and I think I copied it already. And then you're going to want to turn in this link in MyWarren. Now I'm sure I'm logged out already. And once you're logged back in, you're going to go to coursework. And you're going to go back to the same file that you first used this link. Remember, this is the shared link, but what you want to do now is click and go into the assignment and go in here, and you're just going to add a comment, and you're going to click on here, and you're going to choose this insert link. Don't just paste it here. Choose insert link and paste it here under the URL. And you could do Command V, Control V on Windows, or I think you could right click and do paste. But I'm going to paste it in there, and it'll paste into both fields here, the URL and the text to display, and that's okay. But the most important thing I want you to do is make sure you change this to be new window, because it's very hard to get back to MyWarren if I click on the link and it jumps into Gravit. It doesn't let you get back very easily, so make sure you choose this. That helps me out a lot. And then just hit save, and it'll look like that, and you can hit save. If you screwed anything up, you could always go into edit, or you could always delete it and do it again. But that's all you need to do for this assignment. So it's just a little bit of practice in Gravit, a little kind of introduction, subtle introduction to design principles, just with a couple very basic blocks of type, and that's about it. So hopefully that'll be a nice little introduction to do some things. If you have any issues with Gravit, any problems, questions, let me know. But that's our little introduction in using hierarchy and introducing some of our design principles in using our vector program Gravit.